We can't say the future without AI. I mean, there's no way around it. 50% of workers now believe AI is going to improve their experience. When I come into the meeting room, I need a way to incorporate my AI with what's going on in the meeting. It's almost a bring your own AI type of a concept. Most of what we do in our day-to-day is going to change significantly.
Hear the latest AV trends and predictions in this episode of Crestron's Smarter Spaces podcast on your preferred podcast platform.
When I don't have the time to engage in face-to-face, is I do an old-fashioned phone call.
What is a phone call?
Alexander Graham Bell, my friend. You pick up that phone and you hear the voice of a colleague, a friend, a new acquaintance, even a cold call.
Okay, maybe not a cold call. Wait, hang on. Don't get crazy here.
Well, Willie, I'm gonna make an effort to reach out, but I'm not really comfortable touching someone at this point.
As an old AT&T joke, brother.
Yeah.
Every time I come on here, it's like, boy, how far back in popular culture can we go?
A telephone call now and then will bring them closer. They're waiting to hear from you. So reach out and touch someone. Give them a call.
AV over IP Nirvana, creating a collaborative work environment and immersive video conferencing, is trying to make a comeback. All that and more next on AV Week. This is AV Week, episode 685, recorded Friday, October 4th, 2024. Hybrid Connections. This is AV Week, your weekly wrap-up of audiovisual news and information. These are the biggest stories we have gathered, but first, the people to talk about it, first and foremost, AV icon Willie Franklin. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Tim. Just sipping coffee and staying busy.
Nothing wrong with that. This right now is tea because I drink too much coffee. Second up is Dr. Mark Pescatori from System Contractor News. Welcome, sir.
Greetings from South Florida. It's a chilly 86 degrees. I wore my autumn best for you. I will probably have heat rash before this is over.
Oh my goodness! And Mark, of course, is a longtime Alabama fan. I am, of course, a longtime UGA Dogs fan, and yeah, that was ugly last weekend if you were a Dogs fan.
Well, you know, I out of respect for you, I did not bring my Big Al statue this week. So my Big Al stuffed animal is right here. That's all I'm saying.
I don't know. Yeah, that was just, anyhow. Andrew Evans, save me, sir. He is from Extron. How are you?
I'm well, Tim. At least it's all SEC because I guess I'll have to represent the Gamecocks here for us.
Well, there we go. They're not half bad this year either.
Beamer's doing okay.
Yeah. Let's get on with the actual AV part and stop talking about college football. First story comes to us actually from Mark's SCN and Paulo Francisco of Evertz. Francisco writes about the benefits of IPMX. IPMX, of course, is the Internet Protocol Media Experience. That's what the acronym stands for. It's an emerging technology, and it's quite frankly, it has the potential to be a disruptor for AV over IP technology. Now, this new open standard, it aims to bridge the gap between various vendors, promising a future where end users can mix and match best-in-class products with confidence in their interoperability. However, experts do caution that while IPMX shows great promise, it's not exactly plug-and-play ready yet, is what IPMX would say. Standard is still evolving with ongoing work on testing and certification process. Additionally, its relationship with the existing SMPTE 2110 standard used in broadcast environments is a bit complex, requires careful system architecture to ensure compatibility. Now, as the AV world watches very closely, IPMX could revolutionize how we approach networked audiovisual systems, but it's going to take a bit of patience. Now, Pescatori and I have spent innumerous time interviewing the fine folks at IPMX over the last couple of years. In fact, Andrew from Mackinac, I kind of felt sorry for him the last time I interviewed him at ISC, because I think I quite bluntly asked him, okay, when is this going to be ready? And the answer of coming soon is yeah, that's about what it is. It's coming soon. Now, this summer, they did have a little bit of movement. I'm going to have Mitchell put Mark's interviews and my interviews in the show notes. You can take a look yourself and assess for yourself kind of what they're saying. But Willie, first question here is, when we look at IPMX generically, And we look at the environment of AV over IP, right? And there's a number of different flavors here. First question is from a standpoint of, and Willie spent his career in higher education. So talk for a second about interoperability and what are the benefits from a customer standpoint, from a tech manager standpoint. What are the benefits of interoperability for you?
Tim, I will first admit when I read this story, I had to look up that acronym first and foremost. But I really like the fact that you made it human-centric in this question, because as a tech manager, I could sell about anything to the higher ups, provided that the budget wasn't too greatly impacted. But selling the end user, when it comes to inoperability or interoperability of devices, is the key piece. You lose patience very quickly as an end user if it doesn't work. And if your tech support people have to spend more than 13 seconds explaining how it's designed to work. So if this coding dog, if you will, has the opportunity to enter the fight, it would be of enormous benefit from a user's standpoint, from an end user standpoint, to be more specific. 90% of the challenge in my career, I felt, was selecting not necessarily products that were going to do the job, but products that were going to play well with existing products located at my institution. And if I couldn't get the coding to work, that was 100% of the battle. It didn't matter if I laid out a solid game plan to meet all the end user's goal, if I stayed within budget, if I couldn't get the hardware and software to play well together, regardless of brand. And again, I know me enough to say that I'm fully brand agnostic. That was an endless fight. And when you've got to rip and replace hardware, not because it's not functioning, but because it doesn't function together well, it's a major, major headache from a budget standpoint, from a building rapport with your end user standpoint, and certainly from your team's credibility and relying on your leadership standpoint. So yeah, if we can code so that these devices are able to handshake succinctly, successfully each and every time, or at least 95% of the time, that would be a huge win.
All right, Mark, same kind of question here is as you're covering this and talking not just to the folks at IPMX, but the other flavors as well, and you're talking to both consultants, integrators, and the end users. What sort of sense are you getting about the power of interoperability?
Well, I mean, the answer is, do we need? The question is, do we need interoperability? And the short answer is yes. Interoperability it's essential. Now, Mr. Francisco, he's a lot more technical than me, so I'm gonna dumb it down a little bit. We're an Apple family. We have iPhones and iPads, but I decided to buy a Samsung tablet, which may or may not have had something to do with me wanting to save $400. And you know what? My tablet works great. There's nothing wrong with it. It does what I need it to do.
Yeah.
But it doesn't play nice with my phone. It doesn't play nice with the iPads around the house. The user interface is also different, so I've had to learn how to do things differently. This is a much smaller scale than what people are dealing with with IPMX and just like whole conference rooms and organizations and educational facilities. Standards are important for AV over IP. They just are. We want everyone to play nice, but they don't. So there are a lot of standards out there. And I think what's going to wind up happening is people are going to buy into one ecosystem and go from there.
Andrew, a little bit different question. You manufacturer here. So you guys have your flavor of AV over IP, right? Extrons is called NAV. You are not alone in this, in the fact that actually we just recorded this week. We're doing a training session on AV over IP, and there are several what I will call flavors of AV over IP. Generic question is how many do you think that we need, or how many do we think that the industry can support?
How many can the industry support when it comes to AV over IP?
And I'm not asking for a number here either.
Three. No, you're not going to nail me down on a number on that. I'm constantly and pleasantly surprised by just the the breadth of what the market can bear when it comes to technologies in the AV space. I mean, it's shocking some days of the week. I will say, and to Mark's point, when you have these ecosystems like NAV for AV over IP, the customer experience, the end user experience, even the technician's experience deploying them is a much smoother and much more easily defined experience when you have an ecosystem, whether that's NAV or somebody else's. The interoperability, even when you've got a standard, you're going to see differences in the way that standard's implemented from manufacturer to manufacturer. And they might all do the same functionality, but what they call it, where they put it in their web page, how it connects from one manufacturer to another, there's a learning curve there. And from a pro AV integration perspective, learning curves mean more time, which means less profitability for a lot of times for companies. So I think there's pros and cons to it, and you really just have to balance it to see what's going to fit you best.
This is Tim's opinion. This is Tim's soapbox for 30 seconds, and I'll try to make it 30 seconds. IPMX, it concerns me in this. I've seen this movie before, and that movie was called AVB. And I'm terribly sorry. I do not mean to compare and contrast, because they are two different organizations. They are two different types of technologies. But the promise of IPMX feels a lot like the promise of AVB that never quite played out. So cautiously optimistic, but there's a big emphasis on that cautious part. So as you're designing systems and as you're looking at technologies, just kind of understands a little bit of the history of interoperability in the AV industry.
Do we secretly want to roll back the analog sunset so that everything plays well with everything, and you don't have the protocols to deal with? The hard lockdowns that's encoded in software. But I genuinely have concerns when it comes to the protection of intellectual properties. While I want the devices to interoperate and play together well, I mean, let's face it, if you're pouring your blood, sweat, and tears and significant dollars into research and development and designing the utmost tool for that end user, don't you want to have the glory of that and not necessarily want your competitor to walk in the door with a widget that they just kind of squeezed out of a Play-Doh factory, Play-Doh, last weekend, and say, hey, my device is going to play with yours, and it's a sixth of the cost?
Where I was going to respond back to you, Tim, on the whole AVB thing, those ended up becoming IEEE standards for a lot of the AVB implementation, and even with that standardization, still didn't get the traction. IPMX, we're not quite to IEEE with those protocols, right? And so it's got some uphill challenges ahead of it. And Willie, to your point, R&D costs money, and it takes a lot of effort to get something into the marketplace. I will say SDVOE, they've tried the alliance thing with the 10 gig standard. And there's a lot of manufacturers that are in that space and trying to make something happen with that interoperability of the SDVOE. But 10 gig still is not as prevalent as the 1 gig side of things. And so, with Extron, we've got a 1 gig and a 10 gig, and those two platforms are interoperable. But by and large, you see a lot of 1 gig deployments out there.
And the one thing I will say, and because you mentioned SDVOE, I equate SDVOE to Audinate, and I understand that they're two different technologies, but they're both privately, they're owned by companies, right? The standard is owned by a company, and you buy into that. And Dante has been very successful. Audinate has been very successful in getting the audio part. Their video parts, still kind of on the launch pad. And so the thing about IPMX and the thing about AVB is that openness, right? I understand, again, former tech manager here, I understand the need and the want and the desire for that openness. There's a lot of hurdles when it comes to that, right? And I'll use Mark's analogy about Apple, because it's a fantastic analogy. there's a seamlessness when you stay inside of an ecosystem. I am not giving you advice one way or the other. I'm just saying there are certain trade-offs that you've got to do when you go down the openness road. I understand it. I love it. I think it's fantastic. You just got to understand, the challenges when you go down that road.
Well, Tim, I would say you were cautiously optimistic about IPMX.
Yeah.
I'm optimistic because they're being cautious. I mean,
okay.
Poor Andrew. Every time I know he's going, oh God, he's coming to the booth again. And no matter what the trade show is, he knows I'm coming and he knows what I'm asking. But the fact of the matter is, they are taking their time, and I think they're doing it right.
We will. It is IPMX specifically. We will wait and see, right? And Mark's right. They are really being cautious. Next story comes to us from our friends over at Rave Pubs. Earlier this week, Project Starline showed off its first product design. Now, Project Starline, that's a collaboration between Google and HP Poly. So that right there, two pretty significant companies. The system aims to have, quote unquote, an immersive video conferencing experience. Instead of making the system into a whole room, and I believe all four of us are old enough to remember life sizes, like, their foray into this. The companies are recommending installing this as a standalone station that can be placed into any room. Think huddle space, stuff like that. Starline is a competitor to Project Ghost, which is Logitech and Steelcase's collaboration. Now, Ghost, on the other hand, that is a room-based immersive experience. Pescatore, I'm going to start with you on this. I understand it. I get it. Again, I lived it 12, 15 years ago with life size. What problem is this solving?
Well, I'll tell you what. First, it's important that we all know that Starline isn't new. I wrote about it in 2021. So this has been around for a while. Of course, the technology has improved, and it really is designed to give you that sense of being there. It's because it's life-size video conferencing. You're not looking at somebody. I'm looking at you right now, and you're this big to me. But in Starline, you're full. I got a full-size 10.
That's unfortunate.
I love the concept. However, I'm not sure that I see the use case. I mean, when we have to do video conferencing at work, it's, you got Slack, you got Google Meet, you got fill in the blank, whatever you use. And those are generally short bursts of communication. Mm-hmm. And if you have longer meetings you generally have a lot of people, and let's be honest, we're multitasking. Oh, that's really interesting. So you're getting all that kind of stuff. This seems like an awfully big investment in money and space for people who aren't really giving 100% attention. I see it, although I think it's really cool. I think it's a nice to have rather than a need to have.
All right. Andrew, same kind of question. Andrew, just for the record, is a remote worker for Extron, right? He does not go to the Anaheim office. So, what problem is this solving? Is this something that you could put in your space to have a more, immersive meeting experience for the folks out west?
I think it is interesting for one-to-one communication. Meeting equity, reducing Zoom Teams fatigue kind of stuff. Sure, I guess I can see that. But for me, the times that I'm on an actual, one-to-one UC call with somebody, it's not the majority of my meetings. I'm one of many participants, and some of those are in-room participants. Sometimes it's, 3 or 4 people that are all remote. And I'm not sure how much Starline would really improve that type of an experience. It's a lot of camera switching potentially based off of who's talking. But you get some of that same functionality with Spotlight and Teams or other applications. We saw Cisco telepresence rooms. We've seen other implementations where people have tried to do, making it seem as if the person on the other side of the screen is in the room with you. Corner cases, I think. Neat, pretty awesome way to see people. Not sure it's going to take over the world.
Well, and Willie, that actually is my next question is what is the uptake on this? What do we think the adoption rate of systems like this, whether it's Ghost, whether it's Starline, whether it's somebody else that comes out with something similar in the next year or two?
I feel like this is designed for a niche market. And just before we launched here, I went back to reread that article, and I'll share a couple of names with you real quick. Lifesize, Cisco GoToMeetings, Team, BlueJeans, Skype for Business, Google Meet, Log Me In, and the list goes on. And we all have experiences with that. But where the rubber hits the road for me on this one is I see it as an application where that personal buy-in, that connectivity is paramount. And I think the environment in which it's going to land well are going to be very small environments. If I'm working in an institution and I'm responsible for fundraising and I'm reaching out to philanthropists, I'm looking to raise millions of dollars, but I can't get to you because you're 1,300 miles away, that intimacy of that video call is important. If I'm engaged in a medical exchange as a group of doctors, scientists, chemists, again, that level of intimacy of contact via video would be of value. Even from a city planner's standpoint, a government agency or military applications, I can see that type of video conference environment being absolutely beneficial. For events where I'm just touching base with my peers across town, or I'm communicating with folks in various chamber organizations, I do that throughout the month. And the tools that are on my desktop are more than sufficient. So I don't see myself stepping into a space to have that intimate video encounter where I can pick up on the nuances of body language or posture or the arch of an eyebrow to look surprised and things that would be beneficial. Again, if I were engaging at that high emotional or high cognition level during that interaction. So I feel the products are impressive, but I also feel that it is a very niche market environment.
Last story comes to us from our own website. David Albright, again, no relation, any way, shape, or form. He's a very nice young man who used to work for Legrand and now writes for us. And he's actually in the process of I think he's in the final stages of an interview. I'll tell about what that is once he gets the job. But he is writing about the primary purpose of the workplace. So it feels like we're talking about meetings here for a minute. It's not to foster, the primary purpose of the workplace is now to foster connection, not just among coworkers, but to company culture and the vision as well. Now, this is on the heels of Amazon's CEO saying, get your butts back to the office. Other businesses, however, are adapting to hybrid work models. They're turning to advanced technologies to bridge the gap between in-person and remote interactions. Companies are investing in consistent, user-friendly meeting room systems and innovative workplace experience platforms like AppSpace, Microsoft Spaces, and others. Some forward-thinking companies are taking it a step further, using occupancy intelligent platforms to optimize their real estate portfolios based on employee behavior. Andrew, first question here, and again, I'll point the fact that both Mark and Andrew and me on some days, we're all remote, right? Willie's retired, so he's always remote.
True.
Andrew, from your perspective, again, as a remote worker, how do we create a connection with those remote employees, whether they are 100% remote or even hybrid?
It's a challenge. There's no doubt about that. I will say that, being mostly a hybrid employee, I do show up in our North Carolina office periodically, and it's because there is a reason for it. It's a customer meeting. It's a team meeting with the people that I'm working with, either in marketing or in product development or in sales. And we need to have a high level discussion about something that really necessitates that face-to-face interaction. And when we can't get everybody there, we kind of step it down. It goes, okay, if we can't do face-to-face, let's see if we can do a Teams meeting or a Zoom call. But it still is video. It still has that visual element to it. And so, we're trying to find ways to keep that company culture, to keep that face-to-face interaction where we can. And I think that there is benefit to face-to-face that you can't achieve even with something like, Starline or with a UC platform.
That's what you call a callback, kids. Willie, same question is how do you create that community, that sense of community, that sense of togetherness when you're not getting together?
I agree with Andrew that face-to-face time is very important, but I also recognize that I can get more done in the day if I have multiple meetings to jump on video calls as opposed to driving to those locations. So one of the ways I kind of facilitate the improved intimacy when I don't have the time to engage in face-to-face is I do an old-fashioned phone call. Right? Because you're not concerned about how you're appearing on that video monitor when you see yourself. You're not concerned about your background, whether it's blurred, virtual background.
Willie, I'm going to pause for 1 second here.
Yeah.
Because it feels like we all forgot what technology you just described.
Oh my goodness. Yep.
What is a phone call?
Alexander Graham Bell, my friend. I'm telling you, Andrew, Mark, Tim, you pick up that phone and you hear the voice of a colleague, a friend, a new acquaintance, even a cold call. You can engage that person.
Okay, maybe not a cold call. Wait, hang on. Don't get crazy here.
Well, it's that personal contact that you're achieving.
That really works if you do this?
It does.
Wait a minute. I thought it was like 160 characters at a time. I don't know. What's this voice thing you speak of?
To return back to the habit of phone calls is what's going to get us to a point of successfully returning to the moon. Okay, so pick up your phones, America. Wow. Reach out, make those calls. Listen to the pregnant pauses, the uhs, the ums, the hello, the family, the dog in the background, whatever it is. But make that contact via the telephone. It is a golden lightning rod into the future.
You know what? Ever since I turned 50, I don't care that I'm old. That absolutely, 100%. Give me a phone call any day. I mean, anymore, it feels more personal.
It is.
Right? I don't know what it is. It feels more intimate if I'm talking to you on the phone as opposed to, the 900 video calls I have on a daily basis.
It certainly is more intimate. There's an immediacy to it. Something that I work with various people within Extron, and one of the guys that I work with, he's been on the show a couple times with you, Tim. He and I have kind of this unwritten rule. If it takes more than 2 emails to get to it, and to get a resolution, pick up the phone, call the person, work it out. If you can't solve it in 2 emails, it's not an email solvable problem.
Pescatore, you'll have the last word on this. How do we create this connection with folks that are quite literally disparate from us?
Well, Willie, I'm gonna make an effort to reach out, but I'm not really comfortable touching someone at this point. But I'll do my best.
As an old AT&T joke, brother.
Yeah. Every time I come on here, it's like, boy, how far back in popular culture can we go?
You went 50 years is what you went right there.
Well, I actually thought, as far as creating a connection hub, I thought Mr. Albright made a great point in his article, and that was consistent and repeatable user experiences.
Yep. Yeah.
Nobody wants to relearn video conferencing every time they step into a room. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of productivity, and it's frustrating. I mean, we're all tech guys. We enjoy this to a point, but there are a lot of people who don't like it. I used to be a teacher back in the day, and most of the teachers were scared of technology. They didn't want to press buttons. They had no interest in it whatsoever. So you can't think about it as, wouldn't it be cool if we could do this? It's no, make sure it's repeatable. And then I guess you have to go back to the point of how much is too much and how little is too little. I mean, in your organization, do you really need hot desking? And are people actually, if you have hot desking, are people actually using hot desking, or are they just showing up and grabbing a desk? I guess that's what that whole, he also brought up the space utilization tools, things like that. You're going to have to invest in that to make sure that all this technology you're putting in there is money well spent. I mean, investment in technology is important. I think we'd all agree on that. But a wise investment in technology is crucial.
Well said. Very well said, Mark.
That's an awesome way to end it. Thank you all so much. Willie Franklin, thank you, brother. I appreciate it. How do people connect with you?
Fantastic if you could reach out to franklandjservices@gmail.com. And of course, you can find Franklin DJ Services on Instagram.
All right, very good. Mark, thank you, sir. How do people connect with you or SCN?
Oh, just go to avnetwork.com.
All right, very good. And Mr. Evans, thank you, sir. How do people connect with you or Extron?
Best way to get us is extron.com. And if you're looking for me, you can find me on LinkedIn.
All right, very good. For me, for Tim Albright, do not follow me anywhere because I'm not very interesting. I complain about the Bears, and right now I complain about the UGA dogs. But if you want to read what I write, you can go by the website, and I am writing more on LinkedIn, so I guess you can find me on LinkedIn. But go by the website if you would, please. AVNation.tv. That's AVNation.tv. You will find this program and a host of others. Our fantastic producer, Mr. Mitchell, has produced a brand spanking new State of Control. It's all about virtual control, and that is up on the website now. So all that and more at AVNation.tv. Really quickly, I am speaking at Church Facilities Expo. It is on October 22nd. The actual event is the 22nd and 23rd. I'm speaking on the 22nd. You can find out more about that at churchfacilities.expo.com. For those of you watching YouTube and you like the telephone and you just want to hear our voice, well, you can find AVWeek podcast wherever you get your podcast. And if you're listening and you'd rather see what the four of us look like, you can go over to YouTube and find us there. But first and foremost, go to avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. That is all the time we have for AV Week.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
Hi, this is Jennifer Goodyear
and Erica Carroll
from the Women in AV podcast, where we are encouraged by the incredible stories of women in AV.
Listen in on fun, empowering conversations as we chat with inspiring women, breaking barriers and creating their own path in the industry.
Check out Women in AV on avnation.tv or wherever you get your podcasts.